Welcome to Mushroom Mondays. I'm Mike, co-founder of Spore Life Sciences, and I'm going to be your host today. Today, we're going to have a very special guest, Todd Shapiro, co-founder of Red Light Holland, a well-known player in the psychedelic space, and we're going to discuss his entrepreneurial journey in psychedelics and just have a good time. Todd, thanks so much for joining us today.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me. Mushroom Mondays. That's awesome.
Mushroom Mondays, the best type of Monday.
It's a great kind of Monday for sure. Where's there's no day of the week that starts with P though, or an S. Sunday. So psilocybin Sundays.
I like that.
Can we do that next?
Absolutely. Whenever you're ready, I'll call onto your podcast and we can do psilocybin Sundays. Maybe we experiment and roll together at one time. So Todd, thanks.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course. We're going to be talking about, your sort of entrepreneurial journey, and you didn't roll out of bed and become an entrepreneur overnight. Seems like this journey for you has been brewing for some time. A lot of people know you as a XM radio host. Was that where you started your career, and how did you get involved in that space to begin with?
Yeah, so I'd been doing media before Sirius XM. I, interestingly enough, kind of fell into it a little bit later in life. I went back to school for radio and TV after graduating a BA at York, and kind of just fell. I always thought I was going to go into sports broadcasting. That was my kind of goal. And I somehow fell into media over at the Edge station when people used to listen to radio. That was very popular. And we had a great run there. Very different than what I do now, obviously. But it was sort of a way for me to, I guess, to get a little bit of recognition, become a D-list celebrity. I joke, make a little bit of money. It was kind of cool. Had some fun, and then took the show to Sirius XM, which really actually for me, Michael, was where I became much more entrepreneurial because of the way I structured my radio show. Meaning, I did a deal with SiriusXM where I actually didn't get paid by them, but I owned the commercial inventory. So I had to eat what I kill, meaning I had to sell my own show to sponsors, to clients, that then they would get sort of 30-second commercials built within it that I would do either live or we would produce them. I would support it through Twitter and support it through Instagram and support it through my Facebook following. So that's really where I got this really true entrepreneurial bug, as opposed to being paid by a conglomerate every 2 weeks, just kind of not really worrying so much other than, showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. And what enticed you into that business to begin with? I mean, I guess you obviously have a good personality for it, but what was sort of like the chain of events that was like, I want to, host radios, engage with people and create content?
Yeah, what's funny is I think of it almost like an ex-girlfriend in a way, where I don't think about it too much anymore. So like it's I got to actually go back and dig deep why I wanted to do it. And for me, I guess at the time I was kind of lost, to be honest, in life. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was working HVAC. I was running like a service department in heating and cooling, and I thought I was going to go become a lawyer. I thought maybe I was going to maybe try to get an MBA, but school and focus was a really tough thing for me. And speaking, I think, was gift of the gab was one of my strong suits, I guess. Yeah. And then when I fell into the radio and TV thing, I didn't really choose radio, because it sort of chose me, meaning that I did this weird little TV show called Blind Date. It's way in the past. And at the time, the Edge was interviewing the blind daters to advertise later the show on City TV that night. And I just kind of I was in radio. I was like, hey, can I come be your intern? It was a great old morning show called Humble and Fred. And they said, yeah, come back and be our intern. And then I just never left it. It really wasn't planned. And the neat thing that I liked about radio, which I think actually is a really great asset in business, and an I would say an undervalued asset of radio performers or presenters, is that every day you got to create something new. You sort of can't worry about what happened yesterday. You got to be better tomorrow to have more listeners, to get charged more ad dollars, and by doing that, you're always thinking of the future, not worrying too much about the past. And I think entrepreneurship, in my mind, this is the greatest asset I could have learned from being a radio show host, is that, yeah, yesterday was important, don't get me wrong, but how do we make it better today? And by the way, how do we make that then better tomorrow? You always got to keep moving forward and have that momentum. So it really is one of the most, I think, underrated, valuable lessons that I received from that career.
Totally. And I think we all kind of have to identify our strengths and play on them. And sometimes it takes some time to figure that out. But it sounds like, you recognized pretty early on what you were good at and pursued it and doubled down. So how would you say that those skills kind of translated into what you're doing now?
Yeah, again, I think the first off, hard work. Okay, like I think that things rarely get handed to people in life, and being now the CEO of a publicly traded company, Red Light Holland, it's all it is work, right?
Mhm.
And where did the work from the past kind of fit into now? Well, different work for sure, but the idea that is, if you don't work sort of all the time, if you're not trying to be innovative, if you're not trying to be creative, if you're not trying to take risk, if you're not trying to move the needle forward, so to speak, um, the results typically aren't there. And everything's a competitive business if you want success. And media is a very competitive business. So we had to outwork, everybody else. And I would say that in this situation, I try to outwork everybody else with an amazing team.
Mhm.
And that's the number one skill set that I think any young entrepreneur, whether you raised, we're very fortunate. We raised a bunch of money, but we still treat it as a startup, meaning that if, I was opening up a restaurant today, I wouldn't necessarily go and hire 10 positions for it. I would probably hire 4 that would do 10 jobs. And right now, we see a lot of that where just because I'm the CEO doesn't mean I won't go and edit a video and throw it up on my Twitter, or just
Mhm.
because, my
Wear many
chief
hats.
strategist is a chief strategist doesn't mean he won't sit and try to help do something that's sort of what would be considered a nominal task for that title. So it
Mhm.
really is about hard work for me and
Absolutely.
communication.
Yeah, and to your point, in this world, it's like if you want to stay scrappy, you got to wear many hats and take on many roles, and that's just kind of how things evolve these days, right? So now you're doing something, taking a step back, you're doing something that I think a lot of people would consider super cool, in that you operate a business engaged in marketing and sales of psychedelics. What inspired you to go towards that business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, interestingly enough, it's always about timing in life, right? And um, there's I think a lot of people, what they do is they sort of do a lot of these shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and then they look at where they're at now, and they're like, well, if I made a different decision, I could have been doing something different. And my mindset always within media was, I didn't need to do this for life. If something just naturally and authentically came up in my life that felt right, I would always be ready to make a pivot. So I would never have said kind of a shoulda, coulda, woulda scenario.
Mhm.
And in this case, it really was out of passion, and in a way, a bit of fluke too. Ultimately, what happened was I had a great show on SiriusXM actually, because we got to speak to people much like we're doing right now, long form conversation. People got open with me, and I got open with people, and through that openness and through that transparency came a lot of opening about talks in life of people really struggling. And by the way, this was before COVID, so and people were struggling, and
Sure.
how there's a lot of
Yeah.
depression, a lot of
Well,
anxiety,
health
especially.
is
Listen, I interviewed a lot
new.
of comedians, and sorry.
I'm saying mental health issues are not new, right? It's been around for a long time, although COVID's exacerbated and brought them to the spotlight.
Without a doubt. I took it to heart, and I it was it, but I dug deeper. So how are you coping? What are you doing? How are you dealing with it? My job as an interviewer, and whether it's on or off air, my inquisitive nature led back to literally copious amounts of people who would say, "Oh, I'm microdosing.
Hmm.
I mean, I know it's not legal, but I'm taking magic mushrooms in small dosages, and it's literally changing my life." Anecdotally, this is what these people were saying to me.
Hmm.
So I decided to do a much bigger dive on this. Having only ever kind of so-called tripped out in my college days, and many times, we did annuals with my buddies at the cottage and really got very reflective and really kind of quite open, and really beautiful experiences actually when I think back about them now with my friends. It wasn't for the intention though of going into it, that we hear about set and setting. I don't think we thought that way. We're just like, yeah, let's book a weekend trip, and what came out of that were very magical, beautiful moments that are cherished memories for life, because we all were like self-improving one another and there through it as a group of guys that grew up together. And fast forward again now, just a few years back about the microdosing, I didn't really know much about it. I'm not a long-time advocate. I'm not ever trying to pretend I'm that guy, even though I'm now sort of a face of psychedelics.
Hmm.
And the more and more I learned, Mike, goes, the more and more was, I need to make a pivot now. Like, this has to be something that I, as a polarizing guy that I don't mind with a voice, something that media trained me, I don't mind coming out and saying, let's end this stigma, because it's bullshit. It's crazy. It's insane when you go and look into the war on drugs and how they
Totally.
criminalize this stuff. I mean, much like we're seeing in the cannabis, but like psychedelics, even worse. It was literally limiting progress. Like they saw progress in studies with, way back in the day with psychedelics. So I thought people need access now. We're adults. We have the right to choose what we take responsibly with education. And essentially, through that deep dive, decided that why not focus on markets where I'm allowed to, within a legal framework, sell a product? Because a lot of people weren't going to take me, radio show host guy at the time, seriously if I said I wanted to go do a pharma, medical, clinical trial play, which we're seeing a lot in the psychedelic sector now. But I think they would take me as a brander, as someone who could speak very openly and clearly about why I think people should have access responsibly and through education, and educate people again through psilocybin and what we can't make medical claims, but what we're hearing anecdotally again are benefits. So it was just a quick switch. I did know a couple of guys on Bay Street, like I never asked anyone for $1 in my life other than to sponsor my radio show, but I, provided them sort of a very tangible, measurable service in exchange. And I raised money to say, listen, it's a bit of a concept. Take a chance on me. What you're going to get is a workhorse. And we're going to try to make the most of this Red Light Holland thing and take this concept of starting to sell magic truffles in the Netherlands and see how we can expand it maybe one day across the world. And that's really why I jumped into it. Raised $4 million at 6 cents. Here we are trading, just over a year later at 30 cents, market cap of over 115, 20 million, I think.
Incredible.
And we're really quite proud of the work we've done in just over a year.
You should be. It's amazing. And I love that you're also, spreading the word and in a way, just helping the entire space really evolve, because, it needs advocates like yourself and companies like yours to push the agenda forward. And obviously, we know each other personally. My stance on some of these illicit drugs, like I was in the cannabis space before that, and I'm a strong believer in natural medicine and psychedelics. Obviously now with Spore, we push natural ingredients and supplements, being functional mushrooms. So stepping back though, for those unfamiliar with the business, being Red Light Holland, what's the primary business there? What does Red Light Holland sort of sell or plan to do?
Yeah, great question as well. Sorry, I always forget, that there's people coming into it having no clue. We sell microdose packs in the Netherlands. That's our core focus right now. When I say microdose packs, I mean magic truffles. And people might not know what a truffle is. They've heard of magic mushrooms. And again, I'm not a mycologist, but the basic definition of this is one's grown underground, one's grown above ground. And if you think about it, they just all have the psychoactive ingredient of psilocybin, and used in small dosages. We're trying to sit and measure our consumers' results based on an app that they can then go and follow up with, called the iMicro app. So the idea here is to try to collect consensual data to learn more about users' experiences. So microdose packs, you can go to imicrodose.nl. If you're in the Netherlands, you can see them. Magic truffles can only be sold in their raw, wet, unprocessed form. They can't be put into capsules. They can't be put into tinctures. They can't be put into drops. That's not part of the framework right now. With that being said, it's got a super organic, natural feel to it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of your viewers right now can think about the times, and everyone can be honest, that you're at a club, whatever, you got a drug, it was a pill, you're like, what the hell's in this thing? It's kind of nice just to see a natural truffle. I think it adds to a lot of the comfort level of a sensitive, edgy ingredient. And so we're dealing, again, in the magic truffle business. We've bought a wholesale company that's significantly in revenues to help with distribution. So we not only distribute our microdose packs into smart shops, but we also grow magic truffles that we sell, and then people are also using to then go and create and white label their own products. We also, distribute a bunch of products now through SR Wholesale, like CBD and kratom. It's kind of very interesting where we've gone into now. And then the goal is to try to go and get and penetrate as many markets as possible. And it's really neat. Very small steps, but we've received approval from Anvisa, which is in Brazil, which is a regulatory body there, to allow the import of magic truffles in our iMicrodose packs into Brazil, and hopefully it ends up in a patient's hand because it's called the named patient access. And then we've also got product into Canada through a psilocybin import license to be tested with a lab called Seacrest Lab. So we've done a lot of really progressive things. If you think about, again, this sensitive business that we're in, this interesting business that we're in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, highly regulated, but super super interesting and fascinating. And I think it's going to evolve quite a bit. And you touched on this a little bit, but what are kind of your experiences with microdosing and macrodosing? How would you describe them?
So the macrodosing, I go back easily now. I'm 48 years old, which is crazy. So I'm going back like 20 years. We did it probably 5-6 years in a row every year with my buddies. And they really ended up being just like, it's a crazy stupid pun, but magical moments. I mean, we would get deep with one another. We would take little different experiences in every little room of a cottage and go outside, and whether it was the trees looked like big ants protecting us, or if we're in the a room with the bunk beds and the stucco ceiling with just reverse mountains. I mean, these are just like really interesting, kind of opening up our minds and our creativity. But it was the come down period in those trip experiences that were always the most magical for us. Reflection on life and ex-girlfriends and what our future would look like, and about what has our school provided us, and friendship and community, and really just like neat. There's nothing, in my opinion anyway, there was nothing like it. I have nothing to compare it to. So it's actually even hard to describe it, because it really is out of this world, so to speak. But again, we were in comfortable places. We didn't know about setting then, but we were around good people and comfortable places. And I think that's what allowed us to really have these great experiences. And then I would say with microdosing more recently, like when I go to the Netherlands, and I use our product, the iMicrodose product. And again, my company is not allowed making medical claims. We have to be super careful about that. It's really, really, really terrible if we do. But I could tell you about my experiences. And my experiences are definitely about, I'm a very anxious guy. It's funny, Michael, I remember we went to a wedding together, or no, a charity event. And I remember you said to me, I'll never forget this, you good guy, Todd, you're always moving around. You're always, I'll never forget you said that to me. You're like, you move around a lot. And I admired your calmness and your stillness. Like, you have this like, stoic way about you. And that's just who I am. Like, I sort of can't control that. And that's because there's always just my mind. I'm racing, I'm going, I'm anxious. Sorry?
You got to embrace it, right? That's your personality, and you can in many ways leverage it in such a positive way as well, which you have.
I hope so. And back to kind of when I microdose in the Netherlands, what I find is I think I'm always moving still. I'm always kind of, talking and going, but I definitely internally felt like I parked a lot of anxiety, meaning it didn't go away. It wasn't like getting drunk and you're just like, yeah, you got this bravado, everything's fine. It was like, oh, I recognize that's there. Let's just put it on a shelf over here and focus with my day. And because of that, I found that I would get an overwhelming amount of positive energy just influxed into my system. And after doing a lot of careful thought, and usually when I was microdosing and thinking about it, is I think sometimes with that anxiety became doubt, and with that doubt provided negative energy into my own aura, into my own body. And negative energy can be drowning, and it can kind of like want to take some life and energy out of you, where you just want to go for a rest in the midday or whatever. And so for me, it's about parking the anxiety, focus, and then having great amounts of positive energy, which allowed me to really get through my day far better than I would on a day-to-day. So really, really positive experiences. Again, the company Red Light Holland can't make medical claims at all, but I can tell you this is what it had done for me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And to echo that sentiment, I've personally experimented with psychedelics quite a bit as well. And I take microdoses from time to time. I'll be completely honest and transparent about that. And for me, it elevates my mood significantly. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and I know that kind of, it's kind of broad these days, hard to narrow down exact, I guess, physiological reason for it. But what I did find is the microdoses acted like a kind of an all natural type Adderall for me. And I hate Adderall. I've taken it. It just gives me the jitters, makes me feel uncomfortable. But with microdoses, I really felt like a bit of clarity and transparency, and definitely an elevated mood, which is incredible. I have to ask, Obviously, given my business as well, have you tried non-psychedelic mushroom products like spores?
Yes. So, I mean, I haven't had your product, full disclosure, but I've had similar products. Can you send me some samples of your
Absolutely,
products, actually?
absolutely.
um, so, yes, as of late, definitely been taking some more functional products and try to sample some. I mean, it is a industry that we've talked about also focusing on at Red Light Holland. About going into that product line in terms of trying to maybe brand a Red Light Holland product. We have a distribution company with access to 1,000 shops across Europe. So I think that's definitely something we would like to do. We also recently purchased 80% of a farm called Happy Caps.
Mhm.
And Happy Caps does these home kits that have shiitake and lion's
Yeah,
mane
I've
and
seen
oyster
those.
mushrooms.
They're
Really
cool.
cool product, like an amazing product that we're trying to get out there. And then the idea is also, because we did another kind of, it's only in a non-binding right now, and meaning that we haven't fully closed on a definitive agreement, but it's to work with the founders of Carlton Farms and with Holborn Farms to start our own farm in New Brunswick, where we maybe have the functional mushroom capability, because we all know this is like a $30 billion business, I believe, by the year 2030. People are really, it's really beautiful to hear people talk about functional mushrooms and how wonderful and natural and energetic it makes you feel.
Totally.
And it's some call it immune boosting, whatever it may be. And in these times, man, one of the things we need to do, and we all know this, and you're in the business, so you get this for sure, is that we're smart enough with enough education and enough research behind us now to realize, like, we need to take better care of our bodies. And
Totally.
we've been thrown processed foods our whole life, and we've been thrown all the shit in the world because it's been marketed to us so well. And we're really silly for not capitalizing on our own health, because it's right in front of us now with access and information to eat better and to consume better products. And I would say that, well, I don't even know if you're allowed making medical claims to your sport products, but I can tell you this: it's better than a Pop-Tart.
Totally. At the very least, it's a hedge. Even if maybe you don't feel the difference right away, you know that you're taking an all natural product that, has been time tested to be safe, and just overall, mushrooms are good for you, even from just like a consumable perspective. Of course, we're not talking about, the poisonous varieties, but definitely the ones that we use at Spore, are all proven natural ingredients that are safe to be consumed. And for me, obviously, with my medical background, having issues with MS, and not taking care of myself, quite frankly, for many years, to your point, eating high sugar foods and all types of things that were marketed very well to me as a kid, that I consumed and just ravaged my body with. And thankfully, I have gone sort of that all natural route, and it's been working for me, like, incredibly so. And so I'm a big proponent of that, and definitely agree with your points on that side. So, kind of stepping back a little bit, I imagine that starting a company like Red Light Holland came with immense challenges, regulatory or otherwise. What were some of the biggest challenges you think you've experienced and overcome in starting Red Light Holland?
For sure. And I just want to say first, I super commend you for your transparency in what you've gone through. And I think that's really cool. I think that's the really neat thing about today's day and age, is that people are really more comfortable with talking about personal ailments or some difficulties in life. And I don't think that would have been a thing 20 years ago. And, you bringing and providing recognition to what you're going through helps others feel more comfortable in talking about it and not look at it as a disability, but look at it as a comforting community of people who want to support you and get through this. So I just think it's awesome, man, that you're a voice to that. And,
I appreciate that.
and because, there's beyond stuff like regulatory issues and stuff, I think the most important thing is most of us, I hope, want the best for everybody. So, I mean, really, that's great of you. So
Absolutely.
back to the regulatory issues. Listen, we are in I call it the formally illicit and functional substance business.
Mhm.
If you think of like a quick service restaurant, it's QSR. If you think of a ready to drink, that's RTD. We're in the FIFS business, formally illicit and functional substances business. And because it's formally illicit, or in some areas where I guess it would still be considered illicit, of course, you got to get legal opinions. That's the first thing you have to do. So being a publicly traded company, I think adds a lot of credibility and validity to the entire psychedelic sector, especially on the recreational side. I mean, we're not just a company that can go and sell magic mushrooms in a back corner, deliver them online without anybody kind of paying taxes or whatever. We have to report, we have audits, obviously we have inventory counts, everything, right? And it legitimizes it, in my opinion. And I think it's something that us as a company, Red Light Holland, maybe doesn't get enough credit for. And I also think it's something that we should be extraordinarily proud of. So legal opinions, there's always that kind of issues. And then where can you distribute products? So, you have to be very careful in finding out, other than our truffle products, which I know I can do in the Netherlands. Well, where can I sell CBD products? There's very interesting CBD regulations. Then also, it's just all of it. Like, what else? I would say, like, being careful on how you present it on the website. You have to go through like super careful messages. Again, not making medical claims, making sure we can market, but how do you market? Because you don't want to market too in people's face too much, because then people will be uncomfortable with it. So you want to kind of be covert in how you market it, but with a very educational message. So the main thing we do to mitigate all of this, kind of tough sort of regulatory processes is always be transparent. We can't lose that way. We hired at one point a public affairs team called Wellington DuPont. We were working with them. We obviously, have to go very careful through our MD&As and through our continuous disclosures and our updated, whatever we report for we had to file for a prospectus, for instance, when we had a bought deal. So the Ontario Securities Commission, gave us a seal of approval because we got a bought deal. We got a prospectus done, meaning our business is completely compliant, or we wouldn't have got that, obviously. So it's all these things. And back to the mitigation is we're always about responsible access, making sure that only adults obviously can ever get this product legally in the Netherlands. And then there's an educational process with it. So what we've done, for example, is in the smart shops, which are really starting to open up again because, it seems like COVID's sort of similar, the way we deal with it here in Ontario, seems it's sort of similar in the Netherlands. Similar rates, similar numbers, and similar opening up schedules. And if you get to a smart shop, even in some shops right now, you would put on a virtual reality headset that it's like that we've created a 5-minute educational experiences of not only what psilocybin is, not only what magic truffles are or where they come from and how they're grown, but also how they connect to the 5-HT2A receptors, how, for example, you might feel if you're microdosing to try to mimic that in virtual reality. And then the store clerk is actually told to ask you, or, after, are you comfortable with that? And if someone's not comfortable with the experience they just had, they're encouraged not to buy the product. Like, these are the types of steps that we really want to take as a company to make sure people are feeling comfortable, again, with an edgy ingredient that's a very sensitive topic.
Totally. And I love the, just overall transparency and obviously not trying to be overly salesy and getting people comfortable with the notion. I'd love to check out one of those shops next time in the Netherlands. I'll definitely be making a stop. I guess as the next question, what do you think is kind of next in the world of psychedelics? Where do you see the industry sort of heading? Do you think we're going to have a recreational use market in North America at any point?
I'm always so transparent, so it's hard for me to like. So what I see is a bit of a fight. Okay, I see a bit of a fight. I see pharma. I see some companies trying to limit access. I see them trying to criminalize nature, is what I see. And I see them try to be greedy and to take all the money for themselves because of FDA breakthrough therapies and because we're seeing great results from some of the clinicals, different companies are doing. And they're going to want to limit recreational access while they profit off of medicinal, pharma, synthetic, prescribed model. And I think that's dangerous.
For sure.
I think it's super dangerous. Don't get me wrong. Do I think that maybe a 65-year-old who's dealing with issues is going to be super happy to have a standardized synthetic pill that they use, kind of like you mentioned Adderall earlier, that they think, if proven, can help them? I think that's miraculous. And a company like that should be, applauded for sure. But if that same company tries to patent and destroy a natural occurring substance, that's when we're a very dangerous area. And I'll tell you why. Because it's ignorant. it's ignorant to think that some people are going to want pill forms. They're going to want prescriptions, because look what happened with the opioid crisis. Look what happened with benzos. Look what's happened with some mental health medicines right now that clearly aren't doing their jobs. And I think it's dangerous because you're presuming that people want them, even though they don't, because they'll want natural access and natural occurring products. But I also think it's dangerous because it's elitist, and it is elitist. There are many third world countries that don't have access to medications like this, but they do have access to natural plants and fungi. And why would we want to limit a human being's ability to have some potential? Hopefully, again, I'm not making the medical claim, but if they're saying it creates great wellness for them, why would we take that away from them? Why would we criminalize that? So it is dangerous, and that's why I say it's going to be a fight. So back to the recreational market, Michael, I believe that it won't go away. It's always going to be an underground illicit market anyway. I think governments are going to want to figure out a way to get their tax dollars on it, as long as there's hopefully companies like ours doing it responsibly with education. And they're going to want to be able to say, you know what, this can be commercialized, but it has to be done carefully. Of course it has to be. It can't be done recklessly. But the other thing is there's going to be a social movement to support that, because younger generations, and our market research shows this, is that they want access to natural occurring products more than they want synthetic pill forms. They would much rather take a magic mushroom that's dried than something that's given to them and told by a doctor that it's going to help them. So, we think that these social movements will demand access. And listen, we're seeing it in Oregon with Measure 109. We're seeing it with what's going on in California right now with the decriminalization, which is Senate Bill 519. And I think we're just seeing it all over social media, and people hashtagging microdosing and telling you how much they love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you made a lot of really great points there. I think the illicit market's not going away, and hopefully, regulatory bodies recognize that and opt to tax and regulate it rather than, suppress it completely. But I guess only time will tell. And, to your point also, there are some markets that are opening up. Oregon, I heard Maine the other day decriminalized. So it'd be great to see, obviously, this push. And again, like, I myself, I microdose. They are illegal here. I still have access to them. I think a lot of people do. And so that market's just not going to go away. And I guess, like, if someone wants to learn more about psychedelics and what you're doing with Red Light Holland, where can they find you? Where would you direct them?
Yeah, so I think that, we have a corporate page if you're sort of an investor and interested in that. That's redlighttruffles.com. If you're interested more in just supporting a movement and learning more about what we do, you can go to our product pages. One is imicrodose.nl, where we sell product only in the Netherlands. We can't ship it anywhere else. Or imicrodose.ca, and that's more of our branding page. That's more of our represent and support the movement page, where you get like hats and merch. This was designed by a famous designer named Karim Rashid, who was named Time Magazine's structural designer of the Americas. And we got some fun people working for our company who, Russell Peters, famous comedian, he was on Joe Rogan talking about us twice. And, this stuff's kind of neat for us, I got to tell you. And I think if people want to support it and realize that we're trying to be a voice to the people and a voice to, ask for regulations, but do it carefully, hopefully you wouldn't mind buying a hat. So that all helps and goes a long way. And the other thing, if you just want to follow me, it's an old radio handle to make this all come full circle, because you're asking me about my media background to start it. It's an old name, but I am Toddy Tickles on Twitter and Instagram. And I'm pretty active. If you DM me or message me, I'm a little less off Instagram these days. I find it very time consuming, and I have less time in the day back to the hard work. But Twitter is a really great way to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your journey. Thanks for joining us on Mushroom Mondays. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time, and love hearing what you're doing. And I'm a big supporter, as you know, and I hope more people kind of wake up and support the movement as well. Remember, to our audience, to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel, get notified when we go live or have a new episode of Mushroom Mondays. Again, Todd Shapiro from Red Light Holland, thanks so much. I'm Mike Zavet, co-host of Mushroom Mondays with Spore, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Great job, bud.